Hello and welcome to a Friday edition of the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. My name is Pat Burnham, and I am going to fly solo on what's going to be a fast Friday show. Shane is on the road traveling to a game, so he could not join us this afternoon. But anyway, I still want to talk some preview some of the week 3 games in college football. We'll talk a little Florida, LSU, Clemson, Georgia Tech, UGA, Tennessee, Pitt, West Virginia, USF, Miami, and a couple other games. Also, want to talk a little bit about the AP poll drama from this weekend. So we'll get into all that. Now, listen, Florida State played last week. There's not a lot to take away from their game. So if you're a Florida State fan that's watching or watching Tallahassee, I know ran into several people last night that listened to the show that are Florida State fans. About the only connection I can make to this week's show in Florida State is a game that's taking place tonight that I think people might want to pay attention to. It's not going to be fancy from a national perspective, but if you're a Florida State fan, you might want to check in on the UCLA New Mexico game tonight. It starts at 10 p.m. on Big Ten Network. UCLA has lost to UNLV and Utah to start the season. They take on New Mexico, who beat Idaho State last week, but played Michigan pretty close in the opener, 34-17. I get if you want to consider that close. But anyway, the reason I think you wanted to pay attention to this game is Deshaun Foster's in his second season at UCLA. Things have not gone well to start the season. Tony White, FSU's defensive coordinator, played at UCLA. So if this is a job that looks like it might come open later in the year, and Florida State has a big season, gets this thing turned around officially. I think Tony White is a name that you may hear associated with the UCLA job. So, FSU fans, you might want to pay attention to that game tonight as you're winding down your Friday night. Nice little football game at 10 p.m. Eastern to do that. The only other take I have before we get into week 3 games is actually, it is a take on a week 3 game. NC State, Wake Forest was a very entertaining game last night. Both of them are on Florida State's schedule. I was impressed again with NC State on offense for the second straight week. Um, they have a really good running back in Hollywood Smothers. He looks to be the real deal. Wake Forest surprised me that they were. I didn't think they would be that competitive with NC State. NC State has fallen behind in its last 2 games and had to play catch up. They fell behind by 14 points last night. I believe they were down by double digits against Virginia last week. But listen, takes them a little time to settle in. CJ Bailey looks like he's getting better, but I think that offense revolves around that running back. And so a little bit of a scouting report there. Wake Forest was very competitive with NC State for most of the game, and then NC State took over running the ball. But anyway, very entertaining game for Thursday night. Turning to Saturday's games, I think the first game I want to get into really is LSU hosting Florida. And before I do, I just kind of want to talk about the massive overreaction to Florida's loss to USF. I understand why people are Florida fans are upset. You shouldn't lose to a USF, a UCF. At least that's the thinking. But you listen, USF has been competitive periodically throughout its short football history with some of the better teams in college football. And when USF has been good, sometimes they've been very good. They've now beaten every team in the state of Florida over the course of their short history. But certainly this looks like a very good USF football team as they get ready to go to Miami this week. But listen, I know a lot of people were talking about wanting to have Billy Napier fired. And listen, it happens every week in college football. There will be a list of coaches that if they lose this weekend, their fan bases will be firing off on Twitter and X that they need to be fired. And Billy Napier's week was last week. But listen, there is nobody on their schedule that looks unbeatable. LSU, who they play this weekend, struggled versus Louisiana Tech. Miami, solid team. We'll find out more about them this weekend against USF. They might be one of the 2 best teams on their schedule right now. But Miami certainly looks to be a challenge. Texas, I don't think they were as good as they were last year, at least not through the first 2 games of the season. And they get them at home in the swamp. Listen, it's hard to play in the swamp. I believe that'll be Texas's first trip to the Swamp that I can remember. I think they'll be surprised by the atmosphere. Then you're at Texas A&M. Who knows if they are better than Florida? I know there's a stat put out last night that Florida is a underdog in 7 of its next 10 games, but that's based off the first 2 weeks of the season. So you gotta let it those odds will change. They don't mean anything past this week, really, and I'm not sure they mean anything this week. But you got Texas A&M at Texas A&M, are tough place to play. Florida's played there before, but who knows if they are better than Florida? We'll see that over the next couple of weeks. And you get Mississippi State at home, an improving Mississippi State team, but you would think that's a win for Florida. UGA neutral site. Then you're at Kentucky, at Ole Miss. I think they could beat both those teams. You're at Tennessee at home, FSU at home, and who knows what those two teams are going to look like once you get to the 11th and 12th week of the season. So I think that was a massive overreaction to Florida's loss. And listen, I have not paid attention to it a lot this week. There's been other stuff going on to pay attention to. But listen, Florida's very good on defense. To me, DJ Lagway's got to play better. That offensive line's got to play better. Uh, you know, I think we need to find out whether DJ Lagway is who everyone said he is and who they paid for, or is he the SEC version of Kyron Drones at Virginia Tech, a guy that has all the tools but just can't make it happen, just can't win at a high enough level to make a tremendous difference. That being said, I think Florida's going to go into Baton Rouge, and I think they're going to come out with a win. I know nobody's giving them a chance, 3.5-point spread. But listen, this is the same thing we went through last year. Florida started last year 1-2. They haven't even gotten to their third game yet, and people are all over Napier. They were dancing on his grave before last season, and he overcame that. I guess my point is we'll see how it plays out over the course of the season, but I think there was massive overreaction to that particular loss. And listen, how South Florida plays the rest of its season, this could look like a good, or what they call a quality loss when they start looking at rankings towards the end of the year, particularly if USF, even if it loses to Miami, could run the table and end up being an 11-1 team and a college football playoff team. So that loss to USF could look a lot different at the end of the season. So we'll see how that plays out. Clemson at Georgia Tech. Listen, Clemson has not looked great. They look lethargic against Troy, and it would have been interesting to see if Troy had been able to continue its momentum early in that game, have it not been for a long weather delay. But at the end of the day, I think the best team won, and that was Clemson. But they looked lethargic doing it, looked uninspired. It's kind of not what you associate with a Dabo team, especially with Tom Allen as its defensive coordinator. But you're going to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is one of the tougher teams in the ACC physically, mentality wise. My big question here: if Haynes King is truly healthy, if they could use him the way they want to use him with Philo as the backup, I like Georgia Tech in this game. I just have not seen enough from Clemson to think that Clemson is unbeatable in this game. And I think that Haynes King is the better of the two quarterbacks. Now, he is a different quarterback than Cade Klubnik. But I think if you just want to talk about who is the better quarterback and does more for his team, I think it's Haynes King. So if he's healthy with Philo backing him up, and listen, Georgia Tech's going to have to change or at least limit some of what he cannot take the beating he did against Colorado, and that's already shown itself, and play the rest of the season. He missed last week's game, and Andrew Philo was one of the offensive ACC's offensive players of the week. So we'll see how that plays out, but I like Georgia Tech in that game, particularly if Haynes King is full go and they don't have to limit anything other than them limiting him as far as the number of shots he takes, meaning slide, get down, get out of bounds, get 6 yards instead of 9. We don't want you to take a beating to get 9. So I'm going to go Georgia Tech over Clemson. Another game that I like, UGA versus Tennessee. Listen, I'm not sure what to make of either of these two teams. Georgia has wins over Austin Peay and Marshall. The win over Austin Peay was non-motivated at best. They kind of sleptwalked through that game. Then Tennessee has beaten East Tennessee last week soundly, and then of course they beat Syracuse in one of the kickoff games to start the season. Uh, I think Tennessee will need to play better on defense than they did against Syracuse. I don't know how you evaluate anything you saw about Tennessee against the Buccaneers of East Tennessee. Uh, you know, Georgia, I don't know what to make about either one of these teams, to be honest with you. A 3.5 point spread at Tennessee. So I'm gonna pick Tennessee in this game. Might be wrong. Georgia may come out and dominate them like they did Marshall, but this is not Marshall. And I think of the wins that these four teams, combined four wins that these two teams have, I think the most impressive win is Tennessee's win over Syracuse as opposed to Georgia's win over Marshall. All right, moving on. West Virginia at Pitt. The backyard brawl. This is a great rivalry. I'm glad they've restarted this rivalry, but it's not going to be a great rivalry week for West Virginia head coach. I think that Rich Rod is in for another loss. They have 70 kids new in that program. They got beat by Ohio last week. Pitt looks to be has played. Neither one of them played anybody really. I think West Virginia's played Robert Morris and Ohio, and they got beat by a nobody. So that's never a good sign. Whereas even though Pitt hasn't really played anybody, they have won both their games, and I think Pitt's going to take this game. I think they're favored by 7, and I think that they will cover that for sure. Not that I'm a better or anything, but I do think that that is who will win that ball game. And listen, that'll be a great atmosphere. I went to West Virginia several times, and it'll be a great game on television. I believe that's a 3:30 kickoff. But yeah, I think that spread is down to 5.5. Opened at 5.5, now 7.5. But yeah, I think that behind Eli Holstein and the Reed, the running back, I just think that's a better team than West Virginia, and the best win out of those two teams out of their 4 combined first games would be Pitt's 45-17 win over Central Michigan. A game I cannot wait for is USF at Miami. We'll get into a little bit of the AP poll later. But listen, USF should be ranked higher than 18th, but it's 18th USF at 5th ranked Miami. Don't understand the 17-point spread in this game either any more than I did USF being a 17-point underdog to Florida last week. Now, I guess if you're Vegas, I kind of understand it. This is a USF team that has played 2 highly emotional games already against ranked opponents, Boise State and Florida. Both physical games, particularly the Florida game was extremely physical. Can they get fired up for another big game? Notre Dame had Bethune-Cookman, I believe. Miami had Bethune-Cookman last week, I believe, after beating Notre Dame in their season opener. Looked very good in the season opener. Were very methodical in the way they dispatched Bethune-Cookman last week. Miami looks like they're the real deal through 2 weeks of the season. I think USF will battle, but I think Miami wins, and I think for one reason only, where they both have good quarterbacks, right? I've been really impressed with the Brown kid from USF. He's a future NFL guy. If he gets hot, both running and throwing, there's no telling what may happen. I think they are going to have to utilize his legs a lot in this game, because the part where the matchup that I don't like for USF is USF's offensive line against Ruben Bain, Mesidor, David Blay, and the rest of that Miami defensive line. I think this is one of the better defensive lines in the country, and I think that they will ultimately win this game for Miami. I'm pulling for USF. That's who I'd like to see win the ball game. But when I looked at the matchup, it just doesn't seem to work itself out for USF. That being said, they do have a dynamic quarterback. They've got momentum. They've got confidence after these last 2 weeks. But as Coach Bowden used to say all the time, it's hard to get up each and every week, even though these are the games we need to be seeing on a weekly basis in college football these days in an era where coaches are making millions, even assistant coaches, and players are making millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are the games. But my point is, we may see a little. I'm sure USF's mentality is going to be right coming into the game, but can they hold up for 3 weeks in a row against really, really good, solid opponents, ranked opponents, no less? But I'm going to take Miami in that game, and we'll see what happens. Another game I think is going to be interesting. Would not surprise me if we saw an upset in the Arkansas Ole Miss game. A lot of people are heaping praise on, I believe it's Talon Green, the quarterback from Arkansas. I've listened to a lot of stuff this week about how impressed people have been with his performance early in the season. Great athlete, big kid, can throw it, can run it. So we'll see how they match up with Ole Miss on Saturday night. That'll be a fun game to watch. I think that's a 7 p.m. start. Listen, they've got the veteran quarterback in that game. It's a 6.5 point spread. But Green is he's 51 of 47, 41 of 57 for this year already. Now, obviously, Ole Miss has got a dynamic quarterback. Really a battle of two really good young quarterbacks. Simmons, he's 33 of 55 with 3 TDs, 4 interceptions. When you look at their schedules, I think you've got Arkansas's had Arkansas State and Alabama A&M, and then Ole Miss has beaten Kentucky and Georgia State. So I'm kind of rolling the dice on Arkansas. I am going to pick Arkansas to win this game. They have both teams have been able to be balanced with their offense. Both quarterbacks have thrown for over 500 yards in 2 games, and they both have running backs that have a minimum of 195 total yards. Washington from Arkansas has 195, and Lacey from Ole Miss has 246. So we'll see what happens there, but the pressure's on Sam Pittman. I think he gets an upset win, and we can delay talk of the Arkansas job coming open anytime in the immediate future. All right, so let's get into a little bit of this AP poll controversy from this week. Listen, there were a couple of AP pollsters, Haley Sawyer, who covers USC, who didn't have USF in her top 25 at all after 2 top 25 wins, including a win over Florida. Koki Riley, who covers LSU, had Florida ahead of USF and Bama ahead of FSU, which none of that makes sense at all. And there's been a lot of debate on who should be voting, when should we be voting because of this. This goes on each and every year. But one of the things that surprised me about what Haley Sawyer did, she came out and doubled down and says it really doesn't matter who she votes for, and that it's just a cross section of people that are voting, and at the end of the day, it will work itself out. Well, she is probably right in that it will work itself out. I do agree with that. But to say it doesn't matter, if you don't think your vote matters, give that vote to somebody else and to somebody else that's more qualified. If you're not qualified enough, or you're just not interested in voting and taking the time to at least look at YouTube shorts or spend time watching games on your computer while you're at the stadium. But it does matter because it helps shapes a narrative for college football fans and for other voters, right? It helps drive the narrative and opinions for the next week polls, which eventually will lead to a college football playoff poll. Now, a committee is voting on those polls for sure. The AP will not have anything to do with that, but I'm sure that some of the impressions that the college football playoff committee is under is what the polls say, right? I mean, that they don't have a chance to watch every game during the season. I hope they are, but who knows? But I think that what this probably tells us is we probably shouldn't do polls until all college football teams have played at least 4 games, and then do the first poll. But if we're gonna do polls, that means they do matter, and you need to take the time to do them seriously. And listen, I've spent several years in the media. I'm not a part of the media anymore. But one thing that does stand out to me 90% of the guys, men and women that I met in the media, work their butts off and try to do a good job. There are people that I've run across that don't do enough research, don't go back and watch enough games. I know I've worked around people. Worked with Fox Sports and Scout for several years, and worked for the Florida State website that was associated with the Rivals recruiting network. Uh, I've worked with or been around people that don't know some of the basic rules of football, but yet they cover football on a daily basis and they shape a narrative around whatever program or whatever conference they're covering. Uh, but I do think that people, if we're going to have an AP poll, they should take the poll seriously. They should not have the attitude that it doesn't matter. And if they do hold that opinion, they probably don't need to go on somebody's podcast slash YouTube show and expose, let those uh, feelings be known. But anyway, listen, I don't know why we have polls this early in the season, particularly in an era of college football where the roster turnover is what it is. Does anybody really know outside of maybe the top 3 or 4 teams from the year before who don't have a lot of attrition off their rosters? Say Ohio State, who was in a national championship game, you're probably not going to lose a lot of players off that team. You're not probably going to lose a lot of players off any of the top 4 teams, but the rest of in any given year. But the rest of the teams, they're going to have some attrition in the portal, some more than others. And so, how do you really know without the caveat of a spring game or against a team playing against themselves, let alone against somebody else? Without that, how are we supposed to have any idea what anybody has coming in to a new season? So I think one of the ways we could get rid of that is, hey, let's not have a poll until week 4 and everyone's played 4 games and we have a little, at least you're 33% away, 33% down the road of that particular college football season, and we all have a better idea of who these teams are. It would also help in polling if all conferences were playing the same number of games, and that if P4s were playing P4s or P4s were playing P4s and the group of 4, group of 5, however you want to call it, as opposed to some P4s playing somewhat competitive FCS teams, where most FCS teams are not going to be competitive against any P4 team and most G5 teams, G4 teams. So I think there's a lot we can do to get rid of this. But hey, listen, it's been good for conversation. But yeah, I think most people that vote on the AP poll and most people that cover college football do a great job. And it's terrible that this has been kind of what some of the story was around college football this particular week. But it is what it is. But anyway, I hope everyone has a great week 3 of college football. I hope your teams do well. And we will be back next week on the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. But we do want to thank our sponsors, Ascension Sports, Home Instead of Tallahassee, and the Mowry Law Firm in St. Augustine, Florida. And we will see you next week sometime. Have a great week.